share more similarities than we do differences. Tonight is an opportunity to come together to discuss the role that the rights protected by the Second Amendment to the Constitution play in our lives. What is the importance of these rights? As we delve into the meaning of the Second Amendment, we will explore it from a number of different viewpoints, excuse me, and at differing levels. What does it mean to us personally, to our families, to our personal freedom, and that of our nation? What responsibilities do these rights imply? How can we exercise these rights while keeping ourselves and our families safe? If there's one thing that I personally hope to accomplish tonight, it is to dispel the myth that the Second Amendment movement is an all-white, all-male exclusive club. It is not. We not only welcome people from all backgrounds and both genders, we encourage it. We want to encourage members of all different backgrounds to join with us in our efforts to preserve and exercise the rights protected by the Second Amendment. Our future together depends upon it. Okay, and with that, I would like to ask everyone to please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce one of our guests, Colleen Stevens, and she's going to sing the national anthem for us.
I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and sing along with me. I just barely got in on a plane, so my voice is really, really messed up right now, okay? So just join in and sing really, really loud so you can drown me out, okay? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much, Colleen Stevens. And at this point, I'm going to invite Reverend Ken Blanchard up to give the invocation. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we come before you in this great occasion to thank you. Thank you for the freedoms that we have. Thank you for those who are willing to defend them. We ask a blessing for our country, a blessing for these who stand in the gap. Bless all those, Lord God, who have not. Help us, Lord God, to be on one accord. Help us, Lord God, to bring back what you have given us. Let us stand firm, ready, and able. We bless your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I'm going to ask Ben to stay, and we can begin the presentation.
So I'm going to try to get comfortable up here. I have preached at Biker
church in Washington, D.C. I am known on the internet as Black Man with a Gun. I've been doing this for the last 20 years. I'm advocating freedom and faith and firearms. So when this came to happen, I just was so thrilled that my name could be mixed on the list of this. Faith, freedom, and firearms. 2 Timothy, 1st chapter, 7th verse says, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control." Those are the points I want to talk to you about right now. See, right now we're in a nation where the spirit of fear is being sold real cheap. They want to make everybody afraid of something so that you can run to father, to master, to somebody. In a country that doesn't have a master or somebody, it's a we the people kind of place. And they're pushing our emotional hot buttons to get us to go places that we don't belong. They're using the tears and the fears of our mothers to change laws, to make us stuck under somebody. The good news is that we have the power to take care of ourselves, our families, our communities, and this nation. But you got to do it, just like Timothy said, with power, with love, and self-control. And that love is from God. For without that kind of love, that fruit of the Spirit, you can't govern anything. You can't run your household. You can't operate. It'll be selfish otherwise. But our communities are in such a hurried rush, and we've forgotten our first love. We're looking for a Savior, collectively, not us, but a lot of people are looking for somebody to help me because I don't want to have to think. And we're putting our faith in gods, small g, not big G. And we call them politicians. And they listen to their own stuff long enough, they believe that they are in control and that they can help you. And we got to do something. So they say, we'll just throw it on the wall and see what sticks. And then they're surprised when we get angry, when we know they're not God. Some people say, why are you up here at a gun conference talking about God? Well, a couple of reasons. Our founding fathers had a very good knowledge of the Bible. Our nation was created to have religious freedom. We have a really strong opinion about who we worship, if anyone. And if you give too much power to an inanimate object, for those who are religious, it's blasphemy. But that's what we do. We say, not us, we say the gun caused the crime. The gun killed the children. The gun must be removed. But that's giving a lot of power to a mechanical device. Exodus reminds me that there should be no other gods but one. We have forgotten that. Brothers and sisters, a gun is still just a mechanical device. We don't have a gun problem in the U.S., we have a violence problem. You must always try to separate the two words that have been stuck together. Gun, violence. There is no gun violence, there's just violence. And violence has existed since there was man. But we have a problem with this responsibility. You know, you can delegate your authority, but never your responsibility. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel." I didn't make that up. That's coming right out of the book. When you're advocating for self-responsibility, for control of your household, put it back on the people who are accusing you of being a murderer, because having a gun is not equal to murder. They ask the crazy questions that don't even relate to us. Why does anybody camera stuck in your face or somebody's asking your opinion, have your answers all ready to go. Be prepared for the craziness. Because you're the last sane people we got left in America. Can I get an amen, somebody? You don't have to be a person of faith and be in America. You can be a whole bunch of stuff. That's the beauty of our country. The other beauty part of it is that you can stand together and be different. That's America. That's why the colors never run. That's why there's only light green and dark green Marines. There's no color in between. I remember when I was a young kid in boot camp, first couple of hours, and I was looking at the differences of all our races and thought, wow, this is a strange group of guys. And the drill instructor came running in there and said, all right, I see all you on this side, and you got all of you on this side, and you're all mixed up, and you're segregated. Change that right now. There's only one color in here, and that's green. Well, I'm telling you right now, we only got one standard in here, and it's red, it's white, and it's blue.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend.
That was wonderful. I'm going to introduce at this time Ms. Carolee Adams, and she's going to speak to you on the subject of family. Carolee has been involved with Eagle Forum, among other things. She's a family activist, and I'll let her introduce herself, and she can tell you more.
Thank you, John. I'm just going to take my big gulp of water and put it underneath here. It's truly a privilege to be with you here this evening, and I mean that. I began my day at my church. We were ministering to the women from the Walter Hoping Home. We had a wonderful brunch every year for them, and if you think you're challenged, you should hear some of their stories. Those are truly, truly the victors. My favorite Bible verses, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And let me tell you, there are many times in my last, 35 years of being, quote-unquote, a grassroots activist that I have been weary. And I was weary today, shoveling out my driveway that they had shoveled all the snow into. There's a lot of snow up there in the Northeast. But anyway, I was watching some of the CPAC conference, I was walking in and out of the room, and I was intrigued by some of the music that they were playing. And as an example, She's Not Just a Pretty Face, Sarah Palin's theme. Life is a Highway with somebody else, and I thought that could be mine. I live in Jersey. Rand Paul, Enter Sandman by Metallica. That was kind of wild. Think by Aretha Franklin was Ron Paul's. Margot Rubio, One Direction, I think it was about What Makes You Beautiful. So anyway, I began to think, what could be my theme? What could be my theme? My parents had a theme song. What could be my theme? And so I thought about the time when I was had a nice executive position and I would be going to a meeting, and I made myself a motivational tape to get myself charged up for it. And the first song on it was the theme song from Rocky, of course. Well, that doesn't apply anymore. And then I thought, well, this is about faith and family and freedom. Well, how about How Great Thou Art, or Worthy is the Lamb, some of my favorite songs from the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. And then, of course, I thought, now I'm a Jersey girl. And you've got to be strong to survive. And Jersey's like, how about Stronger by Kelly Clarkson? But anyway, where it says that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's a daily struggle here in New Jersey, one way or the other. But then I said, I want to call my kids. I'm going to ask them, well, what could be Mama's theme song? And I shouldn't have done that. Well, they didn't like any of the others, not even any patriotic songs. I said, hey, look, there's this song on Eagle's Wings, It's a really good, no, Mom, no. Well, anyway, this is the song that my dearest darling daughter gave me. It comes from Chicago, from Queen Latifah. When you're good to Mama, Mama's good to you. Okay, my theme, my mantra is faith, family, and freedom.
It has been for a long time. And I am involved in politics. I'm a Republican County Committeewoman. I began in 1978 with the Reagan campaign. I was asked to become a Congresswoman, and I said, no, we can't do that. I had that little black book on my table, and politics is the art of compromise, and I'm not going to compromise those principles. But I did eventually find out to be myself a county committeewoman, and I do enjoy that very much. And so people say, oh, you like politics? No, but I love my faith, I love my family, I love my freedom, and politics can adversely or positively affect all three of those facets of my theme. And so it goes on and on for the last 35 years, and there is a point in time at which you begin to think, well, what is my direction? What is my direction? And it doesn't feel like there's any one particular direction I have, other than through daily devotional. That's my recharge. But Eagle Forum came to me probably in the mid-1990s. I was doing a lot of things, working on home education. We were very successful. And by the way, I just wanted to remind you, I think it's kind of opportune, that today is the day when Uncle Tom's Cabin was published. And Lincoln wrote to Harriet Beecher Stowe, so you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great big war. Now, of course, she didn't write the book that started the war, but she certainly had a large part in its conclusion and the end of slavery. And on my mantle is something that I got from Dick Armey, where he says, so you're the little woman who started this great big war. And after that happened in my life, I thought, okay, I've done my one thing, I can stop now. But no, every day there's a brand new challenge. And even if you think you've won the battle 10 years ago or 12 years ago, it comes back again. It never, ever goes away. And that's why you need that strength to endure time and time again. Right now, I'm involved in something called a student survey. And in 1998, now Congressman Scott Garrett and I wrote a bill so that parents would not allow their children to take these intrusive, nosy surveys unless the parents signed off on it. It's called written informed parental consent, 4 words. Made sense. You don't let your kids go on a trip without parental consent. But they wanted to take that out of there because they wanted to, and I have a copy of the survey. It was 156 questions, came out of Richmond, New Jersey, and six sets of parents sued because they said, not with my child, you ain't, not without my parental consent. And eventually they won in court twice, we won legislatively. Well, that bill comes back every 2 years into the New Jersey State Legislature to take out that parental written consent. Now I'm going to tell you, they have said they've changed the survey, but I want you to be aware of it because, I sometimes envy the fact when you're a single issue group that you have one issue, Second Amendment society, which you're not really. It affects a lot of different issues. But Eagle Forum has a host of issues. I wake up on one side of the bed and it's about fiscal issues, and the other side of the bed about social issues, and we cover all of them. But on this student survey, I would guarantee you that if it passes this time, it's going to have questions in there about guns. Do your parents have guns in their homes? Tattle on your parents. This is basically, before it was about alcohol and drug abuse, it was about intrusive, even actually self-incriminating questions, because they would ask if the children were taking illegal substances. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's already passed the New Jersey State Senate. It passed the Assembly Education Committee a couple weeks ago, and it's probably going to pass the full Assembly very shortly. And the reason they want this is because they get money in the schools for these programs, and they abuse that money. I know they abuse the money. And they also use it to put kids on psychotropic drugs. And you know what some of those stories have related to in recent school shootings. No. And there is a black box on those boxes that basically said that violent behavior can be exacerbated, I don't think that word is used, by taking these psychotropic drugs. So that's what they use these surveys for. So we do want to fight something like that, both as Second Amendment rights people and as pro-family activists, as parents who want to protect our children's privacy. So anyway, Eagle Forum is a multifaceted group, and recently we just defeated the nomination of someone by the name of Caitlin Hagman to a D.C. court. And I'm just going to read here, as this National Rifle Association declared in its letter of opposition to Halligan's confirmation as New York's Solicitor General, she strongly supported inside and outside the courtroom the state of New York's activist efforts to sue gun manufacturers for crimes committed with guns when Congress passed the Bipartisan Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act to protect manufacturers from such frivolous suits, Halligan signed on to a federal court brief arguing that the law was unconstitutional. One of Eagle Farm's major issues is judicial tyranny. And I would like to present to Frank, who's sitting behind me still, I think, a book written by Phyllis Schlafly, our founder, called The Supremacists, The Tyranny of Judges and How to Stop It, and signed by Phyllis Schlafly for Frank.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, what could I really say about pro-family in relation to guns? Well, sometimes the Lord places things right before your very eyes and you just don't see it. Well, he did make me see it. When my son was christened, one of our dearest friends gave us plaques of their names with the biblical meaning of their name under it and a Bible verse. And underneath the name of my husband, his name means wise protector, and he was. He developed a very serious cancer, and in 2005 we also had a very devastating hurricane. As you will recall, it was Katrina down in New Orleans, and there was a tremendous amount of not only just, the whole town was torn apart, ravaged, but you had a lot of looting, you had a lot of civil unrest and violence. And my husband and I watched this and, feeling our sorrow for the people so suffering from innocence, but there were a lot of people involved who weren't so innocent. And my husband turned to me and he said, Carol Lee, he said, I don't want to leave you and the children behind unprotected. He said, I think maybe it's time we consider, I said weapons of defense. And now I'm not afraid of guns. My father was a police captain and I loved him dearly. And he'd have a bullet hole through his cap and he would come home at lunchtime or dinner and he'd take off his gun belt and put on the safety and put it on the back of the chair. My knees would get weak. But I love cowboy movies. I love my sheriff's uniform that I had as a kid. And I love Victory at Sea and things like that. But I don't know, I wasn't too keen about that idea. Well, anyway, he arranged through a mutual friend, we spent a whole morning at a wonderful rifle range and with a wonderful instructor with one of the groups connected to Second Amendment protection here in the state. And my husband, who was quite ill, but a wonderful sportsman, perfect marksman, perfect. My daughter, legally blind in one eye, perfect marksman. Carol Lee came. And the instructor said, Carol Lee, he said, you're always, going in the right direction, but it's always in this upper left-hand corner of this box. I said I wasn't aiming for that box. So Guns and I have an incredible history. Now I'm going to move forward now to the most recent hurricane that we had, which of course you all will know was Sandy. And there are many stories about it regarding its devastation, and I remember three in particular, and this is the one that I'll reference. I believe that I heard it at the hearing that you had in Trenton about gun rights and the 22 horrific bills to restrict those freedoms. And it was a man who spoke, and he said that the town he lived in was ravaged. And he said, the police were in short supply. And I wasn't critical of the police, they weren't in short supply. And I have a tremendous affection for law enforcement. My family is establishing a fund to encourage constitutional law enforcement officials to go into that field. And so he said, I had my gun, and I had to protect my wife, my children, my family, and my household. And no looters came around my property because I was, as the head of the household, I was protecting them with my weapon of defense. So that's why guns and the Second Amendment has a lot to do with protection of family. And not only just family, but widows, people in the cities, and you'll hear their stories that are far more intimate than mine are. But moving forward a little bit, Eagle Forum, so that you know, has been very much involved with Second Amendment rights for a long time. Like I said, these issues keep coming back, keep coming back. If you live long enough, you know them all. My Rubbermaid, my garage is not only an annex to our public library, but it's also all of the publications that Eagle Forum produces. We have a monthly Phyllis Schlafly report, a monthly education reporter. Phyllis has a weekly radio show, a commentary, a column. She was at CPAC recently, and she's 89 years young. So, gosh, I got 20 years on her, But anyway, she walked up to the podium unaided, without any aid of any sort, and to talk about basically a book she wrote about a long time ago when she knew Ronald Reagan, called A Choice, Not an Outcome. Now, this is a column she wrote in June 2000, a long time ago. The media campaign against gun ownership. So you think this is a new issue? No, not quite. But Phyllis ends this column, and she talks about the lies behind gun control. You heard that before. The easy availability of guns at home contributes to crimes of passion and domestic violence. The lessons of history she gets into. And she ends this article, and you can find it on Google. The founding fathers had the right to own guns, and I'll quote Patrick Henry, "The great objective is that every man be armed. Everyone who is able may have a gun." George Mason, "To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them." Samuel Adams, "The Constitution shall never be construed to prevent the people of the United States, who are peaceable citizens," and we are peaceable citizens, "from keeping their own arms." And the last one that I'll quote, from Patrick Henry Lee, "To preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of the people always possess arms and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them." Those are founding fathers, and I believe that those words do apply today. I thank you so much for allowing me the time to be with you, and that Eagle Forum stands with you toe to toe. Surely appreciates all that you do. I enjoy being on Facebook, reading what you write, knowing that you are such wonderful, patriotic American citizens, and that because of you, America will survive and thrive in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolee. That was wonderful. At this point, I'm going to move right along, and I'd like to introduce to you Babette Youngberg. And Babette flew in today from Chicago to be with us, and I'm going to let her tell you about her background and give her presentation.
Thank you, Frank. Good evening. As Frank said, I'm Babette Youngberg. I'm a member and co-founder of an all-female conservative group of writers and advocates for conservatism. If you didn't catch it, my maiden name is Holder. I didn't get to pick it. He is my first cousin. I know, thank you. I can use all the symptoms. Now, I live personally an hour outside of Chicago. That was planned for my own safety and his. And Illinois, as you know, has some of the toughest gun control laws in the nation. That's right. We also have the infamous distinction of having the most gun murders in the nation in 2012. Now remember, I said we have the toughest gun control laws in the nation. I'm going to speak to you first a little bit about gun control laws. I was speaking to a lot of people, letting them know that I was coming out here to the New Jersey Second Amendment Society, and they said, well, you're going to be preaching to the choir. So I also work in politics. I prefer to call myself a conservative, but I'm a committee woman in my precinct out there in Illinois for the Republican Party. So I decided to just go around and talk to a few people who are outside my precinct, because that would be preaching to the choir. I've got them well trained now. And I asked them, you know, diversity, Hispanics, blacks, some are immigrants, some are here illegally, their children, you know, they had children, they had generations. I was actually some of their children's substitute teacher for a little while. So I went to go talk to them and said, what do you think about owning a gun? And a lot of them said, is this a trick question, Babette? Are you going to put me on your blog? Please spell my name right or don't mention my name. But amazingly, a lot of them want the right to own a gun. A lot of people assume, or some people, I should say, assume minorities do not want guns, or they're they're scared of guns. But one thing I did find out, a lot of them don't understand the history on gun control. See, they're thinking we're going to save the next school, the future of the country, if we make more laws for the law-abiding citizens. So I had a little talk, and I'm just going to share with you some of the things that I gave to them. I'm sure you're well aware. One of the first things I started off when I had this little get-together, little forum, was I started with 1938, not on American soil, but this occurred in 1938 in the months of October and November. The Nazi government disarmed the German Jewish population. This process was carried out with a combination of legal forms enacted by the Weimar Republic and acts of violence. They even exploited minor criminal acts by anyone that was Jewish or perceived to be Jewish to use as fear tactics to have their laws enacted. Now, when I made this point and was talking about this, there was actually a lady who grew up on the south side of Chicago, and she says, that sounds interesting. That sounds just like what they told us back in the 80s when we couldn't own guns. That's why I always start off talking about the Nazi Party and disarming the Jews, which made them very successful when they wanted to round them up, because they weren't going to face much resistance, or at least armed resistance. Then I usually bring it back and go through the American soil history. For instance, 1650, southern states, there were slave codes. Virginia, for example, a code that all persons except Negroes are to be provided with arms and ammunitions or be fined at the pleasure of the governor and the council. That was so that they could protect their communities, all except for the Negroes. 1751, the French Black Code. It required Louisiana colonists to stop any blacks and, if necessary, beat any blacks carrying any potential weapon, even something as simple as a cane. If they refused to drop it, then they were to be shot. Now remember, back in those days, many of the slave masters would give them a firearm when they were out and about on the stage, and to protect the land or the crops or even their animals, but they could not use that weapon to protect themselves. Then, let's see, southern state after state enacted numerous codes against slaves, indentured servants, and even the Native Americans. In 1865, all former slave states adopted what was called black codes. Black codes were to restrict the freedmen. Black codes are most often referred to legislation that's passed by southern states at the end of the Civil War. This was to control the labor and movement of newly freed slaves. Following right on the heel of that during the Reconstruction era and when the southern states were being folded into the Union, we had what was called Jim Crow laws. These laws were in effect from 1876 to 1965. They were enforced at the local municipal levels and the state level in the Confederate States. Some states in the North had what was called reciprocal Jim Crow laws, particularly when it came to gun control. Jim Crow laws deprived blacks the right to bear arms for their personal defense, to defend their family, their neighbors, and communities. And oh, how the Klan loved those laws. It made their job a lot easier. On December 29, 1890, that date might mean something to some who know your Native American history. That was the gun seized at Wounded Knee Creek against the Native American Indians, the Lakota, who happened to be in their winter camp. Members of the 7th Cavalry federal agents came to seize their guns and weapons, and as they told them, it was for their own protection and safety. What ended up happening, there's some disputes as to whether it was a deaf Native American and he didn't understand the order and a gun went off, but what happened was 297 Native Americans, mainly women, were murdered. 90 were men, 200 women and children were killed. There was an official report that came out by Nelson A. Miles, Commissioner of Indian Affairs, March 13, 1917. He stated, the number killed were only 90 warriors and approximately 200 women and children because most of their weapons had already been seized. Then what I like to do is to bring them forward in time, and we look at prohibition, which also brought about another gun control, another act in the United States. 1930s, you had a lot of gang mob wars going on. So what happened was that the United States instituted the first federal gun control law. Reason why was because the vast amount of Tommy guns, which are submachine guns, and the devastation, but that, the gangs were pretty much, the mob were, but we gotta give it to them, they were a lot more considerate than the gangs that we have today, the street gangs. So the NFA was a statutory excess tax. Now this is a tax on the manufacture and transfer of certain arms. It also mandated the registration of those firearms. That was going to take those submachine guns off those streets. 1968 is when all hell broke loose with gun rights. A lot of folks say that was really the tipping point with the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Bobby Kennedy. The media had a field day. And that's when the first time you heard the expression coined that the media put out there, America's gun fixation. Now you add that to the tension of a nation that's already on edge with the civil rights movement. You have televised showings daily of riots and beatings. The print media's depiction of exploiting the violence. They're not talking a lot of times, they wanted the sensational headlines. So instead of how the sit-in started peacefully, then they want to talk about when the riots broke out with the cops coming in with the dogs. So that all led to the Federal Gun Control Act of 1968. Now what this act did was regulated the firearm industry and owners. So now we're going to start touching on the owners. It also primarily focused on the interstate commerce. So it prohibited firearm transfers among licensed manufacturers. It put limitations on who can do the commerce. Now I'm going to bring it back to my home state of Illinois. And in particular, I'm going to talk about the city of Chicago. Chicago in 1973, following on the heels of the civil rights movement, started a committee called the Illinois Citizens for Handgun Control. Well, it was named that in 1982. It first started out to be the Committee for Handgun Control. They worked hand in hand with politicians. We know that was mainly to the left. 80 years of Democrat rule is what the city of Chicago has had, 80 years of a Democrat mayor. They worked to pass some of the toughest gun control laws. Columbine, the attempted Ronald Reagan assassination, which also resulted in the shooting of Bill Brady and subsequently paralyzing him, led to the Bill Brady handgun violence protection. Now that's the one where they decided to do the background checks. That's when your registry came in. That's when they had specific regulations as to who couldn't possess a handgun, anyone who had been in prison for a year, a fugitive, addicted to a controlled substance, committed to a mental institute, alien illegal, discharged from the armed forces dishonorably, renounced U.S. citizenship, subject to a court order or has a stalking violation. I was interested to see that that was in 94. And convicted of any domestic violence or being a felon. You could not possess a gun legally under the Brady Act. And that was also, if you remember, before then in Chicago, there was the 82 where I believe it was McDonald sued the city of Chicago, and Clarence Thomas made a great statement on that, because here you had a gentleman, I believe he was 76 years old, and he wanted to defend himself. And the city said, no, you couldn't have a gun. So with all these acts today, in all these states, all these federal laws, we have a president who said Chicago Chicago should be a benchmark for gun control. And I said, well, that's interesting because I get to the point where I didn't want to turn on the news. I didn't want to start up my internet. I didn't even want to glance at a paper. Every day, as a citizen with the local news, in 2012, someone was shot. It just got to the point where even the comedians couldn't make jokes anymore. You could not, it just got 535 firearm murders, 440 youths shot and wounded, 60 youths were fatally shot. That was 2012. Yet they're saying that Chicago should be a benchmark for gun control. Part of the problem, they need to look at the root of the problem instead of trying to appease the fear and panic. Part of our problem, and this was my suggestion, and I can only email, phone call, and I think they've all got my phone number on the most wanted to not answer, is we had a sergeant, or superintendent, I heard he came from here. I think you guys booted him out and sent him to Illinois. That would be McCarthy. McCarthy last year disbanded some of the task force. And it was in the news. It was in the paper. They're trying to work their budget because they knew that CPS teacher strike was coming up. So our street gangs, they're pretty savvy, Chicago. They got to live up to the Al Capone days. They figured out, they already know, the game in Chicago is not that when is the cop coming by, oh, he's late today, we got some extra time. I think that when you disband task force, you lay off police officers, they had put them on desk jobs. I know we made the news too recently because everyone saw where don't call 911 if they're vandalizing your garage. You don't call 911 if it's someone outside spray painting. Don't call 911 unless the perpetrator is still there. Because they realized after they took apart these task forces, and look at our crime numbers, but no one's saying this. No one is speaking about this. I'm bringing it up today. After they disbanded, that's when our numbers shot sky high. I have to tell you, and my friends hate this, but Dallas, Texas beat us in 2011. Unfortunately, it's nothing to brag about gun murders, but there's a correlation, to me, there's a correlation there when you take police officers off the street from doing their actual job. Because we're playing shuffle the funds in the state of Illinois. I thank you guys very much. I know I was preaching to the choir here. I'm sure you were aware. But these are some of the things that when I go through, when I'm speaking to people out in my community, and from urban areas, they're not aware that there was so many laws already enacted, and some of them just duplicate each other. And mainly what they do is they restrict us, the law-abiding citizens, those who are well-trained, knowledgeable, and who exercise the utmost safety. And all we want to do is exercise the right, which Carol Lee stated, and I'm going to end up with that what Samuel Adams said, the Constitution should never be construed to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. That's not preaching to the choir. That's supplying us with much needed information. We need to say. We're going to get some more ammunition right now. I know from Colleen Stevens. She's going to come up. Now, Colleen is a veteran and female and black. Is that right? Black. See. But Colleen's going to come up here and tell us a little bit about her background, and she'll have some very interesting things. As I told you, we're going to hear from a lot of different viewpoints. Colleen?
Now, I really, really, really wish someone had told me arms, and go like this. You can stand up too if you need to stretch your back out and everything else. Everybody back nice and comfy seat. There you go. Feels better, huh? My name is Colleen, and I'm a co-founder and a co-author of The Last Civil Right, along with Babette and Pastor Shannon Wright. I'm also a Navy veteran, as Frank said, and I'm a very, very, very outspoken political activist, conservative, and I'm also a Republican committeeman in the state of Arizona. My co-author, my co-founder, Babette, just gave you a lot of facts and numbers and history and everything on gun control. And as the group, there's 3 of us, so we have to break things up so we're not repeating everything. So Babette's our facts and numbers and statistics one. Pastor Shannon Wright is our religious one. I don't know why. And I'm the one that's more just personal, get down to the nitty-gritty, get into, more personal things. So we all can speak on any topic, though. We're very knowledgeable. We all do the same thing, but we just found our niche in the group. Well, now that I'm here in New Jersey, I'm actually really, really happy to be here. When they told me I was coming to New Jersey, I was like, oh, yes! And then it dawned on me. I'm coming from 90-degree weather to 30-something degree weather. It was not so woohoo anymore. So then, after I got over that shock, I started researching New Jersey and their laws on guns, and you guys have a lot of weird laws here. And what is up with that? You guys have to do permits for everything. You have to register all your guns. The rifles are a little bit less strict because you don't have to have those permitted. But then, what is it? Not yet. Yeah, not yet. But you guys got to start, fighting so they don't do that. And you want to go forward. You don't want to go back. Oh, I hate using that word forward. I'm sorry. I said a bad word. Later. Okay, but when, Arizona, we don't have all these strange rules. We just pass laws that we can even have a concealed weapon without having to get a permit. So when I came here, I was sitting here how am I supposed to go to this new place, being female and being small, and defend myself because I can't bring my weapon with me. Because I'm one of those girls who loves to always have my weapon with me. And being in Arizona, I can carry concealed all the time. So I was thinking about it, and I'm going over all the stuff I'm going to wear and everything. And what I kind of came up with was, let's see, I'm going to go to Jersey. I'm used to carrying my little 380. So I decided that I would wear my holster just to make me feel better. And I have my lethal because they probably think I'm crazy pulling a banana out of my holster and being like, get away from me. So that works one way. And then in the media, I've heard a lot of things about these little things. I'm gonna do this, these rape whistles for women. Well, see, this one don't even work that well. But I brought my rape whistle just in case. And then, in the media, they keep telling you that this is the weirdest thing, and y'all have to excuse my language, but they said it first, for women, you were supposed to pee or puke on your attacker. So I have my bottle so shake out whatever you have because I'm ready to do either or. Okay? Self-defense mechanisms is, since I'm little, I can always take off my gun restrictions. How does that work out for you? Are you able to protect your families as well as you'd like to? And women, how many of you guys are mothers? Because there's a few women in here. You guys are sometimes out and about on your own without, your husbands or brothers or anybody, any male companions. Wouldn't you like to be able to protect yourselves to the best of your abilities as well? Say you're out with children. How many of you guys have children? Even the men can raise their hands on this one too. Because the children just don't belong to the woman. You guys, if you're out alone with your kids and there's attackers coming and someone wants something of yours, or they're just loony and just feel like going to beat you up or shoot you that day, you've got kids with you. How are you to protect them if you don't have any tools to protect them with your restrictions, or everybody has to get permitted? And I think I saw somewhere that they said you guys have to have 2 reputable references? What is a reputable reference? Because that could be kind of tricky. I mean, I can understand, like, I can't walk in there and, like, give him my cousin Pookie. He's got, like, 12 million felonies and everything else. And, yeah, I guess that would be considered reputable. But where does the line get drawn on who's reputable in your society, in your area, or not? Nobody knows yet? You guys haven't figured that out either? Okay, good. I thought I was the only one. For the women, I especially love to hit topics for women because I not only am a veteran, not only am I, a political activist, I'm also a rape survivor. So, women, when you're out there by yourselves, you're not going to want to carry all these things and be wearing these big old heels all the time to protect yourselves. Wouldn't it be great to have a weapon to protect yourself? Because when I was young and dumb, I was raised with weapons. All my family's military. So I was raised, I knew how to clean guns, put them together, blindfolded, do all that stuff. But I never saw a big reason to carry a weapon myself. But when I got out into the world on my own, happened one day I was leaving base. And I had stopped off post to get gas, and the next thing I know, I had 5 attackers coming at me. Now, with all my training, and mind you, I've been trained very well by the United States Navy. Well, I'm a mixed breed. I'm half and half. I was a corpsman, so I'm half Marine Corps, half Navy. So I'm a mixed breed. Who said you? Oh, you said ooh, raw. Okay, you're all good. I thought you said ooh, I was going to have to take off my shoe. But, my grandfather was a boxer. He was Muhammad Ali's cornerman for a while, so we grew up boxing, me and my little sister. He would take us to the gym with him to train as fighters and things like that. I was fighting boys that were bigger than me and older than me by the time I was 8. Then I went into MMA and also did the military training, and with all that training, did not help. When something like that comes at you and it surprises you, it does not help, no matter how much training you know. Even men are not safe on this topic. As a corpsman, I can tell you that we've had men come through, many of men, that have been attacked sexually. No way to defend themselves. So, you may not hear it in the media, but I'm here to tell you as a corpsman, I saw it. They came through. They won't tell you that. They'll always mention the girls. Well, you'll hear about the girls a lot more so than you will hear about the guys. They keep the guys quiet, but it does happen. So at 18, that happened for me. So I was young. After that, I started carrying. I was like, wow, you know what? I am not invincible. I need to carry a weapon because I'm very small. So women, and I'm not saying run out and get a gun. I don't tell you guys that story to scare anybody. But people that are properly trained. And that's one thing where people get off track on, is because you hear everybody screaming in the media about how, you know, all these shootings and things like that happen, and it's these Looney Tunes. Well, if you have kids, everybody, I saw a lot of hands that when they have kids, grandchildren, everybody, even if you're babysitting the neighbor's kids, they're going to be old enough. Like in my family, we start training on guns early. So with that, you want to make sure everybody is properly trained. I would never, never, ever, ever stick a gun in someone's hands that is not properly trained, and they can most likely hurt themselves more and they may hurt everybody else around them too. So not until they're properly trained would I stick them out there and say, hey, you're on your own. Just let me know when you're out on the street, please. But like with the gun control only takes guns away from the good citizens. It doesn't take it away from the bad people of this world. Criminals are everywhere. You guys have your criminals here, we have our criminals in Arizona. They're everywhere, and they will always find a way to get a weapon. They will always find a way. So even though we may not be having weapons, if this gun control stuff keeps going further and further, those criminals, we're going to be at the mercy of those criminals, because they're going to be out there with their guns. They don't register their weapons. They don't, most of the time they're stolen anyway. So with gun control being pushed, it's a kind of scary topic, because then we know that, if we don't have guns, how are we supposed to protect ourselves? We as a free people are supposed to be able to protect ourselves. And this doesn't just apply to certain communities. It applies to everybody. Everybody, even, like, I know, most people are on the right, but guess what? A lot of Democrats need weapons too, need to be able to protect their families too. But it's the far left that doesn't want, that wants to push the gun control. But there's a lot of more people that, it concerns everybody. If you've got a family, it concerns you. If you've got people you care about, it concerns you. So when I looked at all this stuff on gun control, I was looking at the police and their response. Like Babette was talking about the police and everything in her topics, is that, did you guys know that there have been over 10 various Supreme Court and state court cases where the average citizen has never won the argument that the police are there to protect them, to protect the people? There's been over 10. Nobody's ever won that. The most notable case, it was in 1981, the Supreme Court, Warren v. District of Columbia. The Supreme Court ruled in a 4-3 decision that, and I quote, "The police do not have the duty to protect you as an individual, but to protect society as a whole." Now, that said, you can't call the police and expect them to protect you, so how are you supposed to protect yourselves and your families? You guys already have really, really, really weird laws. I would suggest you fight with all your might not to have it slipping any further. If Arizona can be an example for you guys, I would call up all your representatives and say, hey, look at Arizona. Arizona, we're on the border. We're a border town. Where I come from, I live in Tucson, Arizona. I live, literally, I can hop in my car and drive to Mexico in 30 minutes. Our violence has gone down because everybody is able to carry a weapon. Of course, you can still get a CDL, you can still get your permits, and if you wanted the concealed weapons permit, you can get it. It just makes it a lot easier to go in and buy all the guns you want. You don't have to fill out the paper all the time. That's all that does. But in Arizona, we can walk into any gun store and buy weapons. Doesn't matter whether they're handguns. It doesn't matter how many we want. Well, now I think they are trying to restrict it, but we're fighting that because they said that veterans only can buy like 3 at a time. But still, that's much better than what you guys have. So, you're welcome. He said thanks for bragging. But do we have any veterans veterans here today. Ooh. We've all seen in the media how they are talking about gun control, and we've seen the stories about, I don't know, I've seen a lot of them on social media saying all veterans are losing their rights, to own guns and things like that. That necessarily isn't true. They're trying to work everybody up to get them stirred up to fight harder when they say every veteran is losing their rights. It's not to say it will not happen though, because if we let them push, it will happen. Right now, veterans are losing their rights because they've been deemed incompetent by the VA. Now, for those of you who do not know what the VA, how the VA works is, it has its own separate board, its own separate court, but we use the same doctors as the Social Security Administration. So we have to follow the same rules, but it's just a different court. Right now, the veterans that are getting their rights taken away are people that have been a danger to themselves or to somebody else. Most often it has been to somebody else. Like I have a friend that he stopped taking his meds, went off his rocker, and was mad at the government that day. So he decided to take it out on the post office with a live grenade. He walked in and pulled the pin. After SWAT got him wrestled down to the ground, and it took quite a few of them because he was a Marine. He's a big boy. Even as old as he is, it took about 7 or 8 of those SWAT guys to get him down. His rights were immediately taken away, and it wasn't just his gun rights, it was his rights to his financials and his bill, his payment, his benefits as well. The VA can give you a conservator if they deem you unfit. With the way things work with that is that where we're better off than Social Security is, the VA, you can have your rights restored if your doctor says that you're doing much, much better, but they will watch you. The Social Security Administration, not so easy. It'll take years and years and years, and most of the time people who want to get their rights restored, especially their gun rights, do not get them back. So if you have both, which many veterans do, the VA, you might get your rights back, Social Security, you may not. But we do have a really good system. It's gotten a lot better than what it used to be. I don't know, I'm kind of young, but I do remember when the VA used to walk in and smell it and be like, I ain't coming here. Because it smelled like icky. I don't want to be mean, but it smelled like old people's pee. So, but they've been doing a lot of work on it, and we also have really good places like the BFW, like we're in today, and the Disabled American Veterans, and the American Legion that are fighting very, very, very hard to keep this government from taking away more veterans' rights for very little reason at all. Because I have seen cases where they have taken away rights from someone who shouldn't have gotten, they just went overboard, they shouldn't have gotten their rights taken away with something that could have been just easily saying, no, don't do that again, and send them home. Now, to conclude here, because I know I think I've gone over my time, I am very long-winded, so I'm trying to keep to my little sheet. I had to write it down. These are weird times that we're going through right now. And as you can see, our government really, really, really doesn't want the people to have very many freedoms. They're attacking not only the Second Amendment, but the First Amendment. They're attacking everything right now. And with the history of gun control, what Babette didn't mention also, does anybody know where our gun control got started, where we pulled that from? Anybody? Anybody know it?
I have a rough idea, so.
What do you think?
I heard that it got started relatively after Reconstruction.
No, actually it goes a little bit further back. You're talking about the Nazi Germany, Nazi Germans. The first one, our draft here, if you go back and you Google the Nazi Germany Gun Act, it is almost word for word. They just pulled it, basically he pulled it, copied it, and said, there we go. And gun control, the only thing it's used for is to suppress people. That's it. Just suppress people. What they call it is the undesirables. They don't want undesirables having weapons. So right now, with these weird times that we are in, the undesirables are us. I see I'm in good company. So in closing, I'd just like to say that, gun rights are not just for white folks, rich folks. That's not it, because I'm obviously not white, and I know for sure I'm not rich. It's for everybody. It's for, the low class, poor class, whatever you want to call it, all colors of people, all over the world. Gun rights are for everyone. If you want to protect your homes, your family, your friends, they're for everybody. It doesn't apply just to ones that people like the media tries to put out. And I would suggest you spread that word just as we do on the last civil right. The more you spread it, the more people know, hey, this is not, the way it is. Most of the time when you mention, Second Amendment rallies or the Tea Party or anything like that, people think that, oh, it's just white folks out there. In fact, I did a Tea Party in Arizona where we actually got out and held up signs and we were doing something, I forgot what it was, but I almost caused me and my daughter, I brought my 17-year-old daughter, well now she's 17, she was 16 then, brought her to one of the rallies and we're standing out there with our flags and our signs, and we almost caused 8 million accidents that day because people were like, oh my gosh, you're a black person. And I'm like, where? So I just want everybody to remember that gun rights are a free people thing, and most of all it's an American thing. By our Constitution especially, it's an American thing. So everybody can repeat after me, gun rights are an American thing. Let's hear it. Gun rights are an American thing. I used to be a cheerleader and I also coached cheerleading. And my freshman squad sounds a lot better than y'all. Can you say that a little bit louder, please? Okay, I'll take that.
Thank you. I don't usually do this, but before you go, I'm a little constructive criticism. But no, just a little bit, you have to come out of your shell a little bit. Just work on it, okay? That's great. Okay. The last woman I want to introduce to you from the group, The Last Civil Right, is Pastor Shannon Wright. And Pastor Shannon Wright is an author, pastor, and a very active member of the group, The Last Civil Right. And I'd like to bring her up now.
I'm just going to take a minute to get this right because it's an important topic. Okay. How y'all doing? I didn't hear y'all. Come on now. We got y'all worked up. I should have heard something. Let me just start by saying, y'all may disagree by the time I'm done, but I'm really the quiet one of the group. But I do see nothing wrong with a Bible in one hand and a shotgun in the other. I'm not really one for being politically correct either, so hopefully you'll remember that throughout the night, because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of things that are political aren't very correct. son are sitting over there. And they made me the way I am, so blame them. I believe in gun control. I'm going to tell you why. If you show up on my doorstep 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you better pray I'm believing in gun control. And I won't lose no sleep if it's a bad day. And I'm really not feeling too safe about it. I might just have to pray about it later. See, I believe that I'm entitled to protect my family.
Right.
And I'm entitled to protect my property. And I'm entitled to protect myself. Now, I'm not the tallest person. I'm not the biggest person. My children might disagree because they're all bigger than me, and for some reason feel a little intimidated by me at times. I'm not sure why. But I don't know. But the Bible and the Constitution say that I have the right to protect what I hold near and dear. And when it comes to, dealing with clergy, a lot of times they say, well, you really feel that way? And I said, well, read your Bible. Don't grow a brain, don't reinvent the wheel, just read the book. And Luke 22:35-8, we read, and he said to them, when I sent you out without a purse and a bag and sandals, you did not lack anything, did you? And they said, no, nothing. And he said to them, but now let him who has a purse take it along, likewise also a bag. And let him who has no sword sell his robe and buy one. This scripture represents change. See, when I sent you before, I supplied it all, but now things have changed. If you have it, bring it. If you don't, go get it.
Right.
Okay? And Luke 11:21, scripture reads, when a strong man armed keepeth his palace, his goods are in peace. Now, did y'all hear me? I said, when a strong man armed keepeth his palace, his goods are in peace. Now, see, to me that says, now understand this. I'm trying not to take y'all too much to church, but it is what it is. When, not if, but when says it's not a question, but it's a given. So when a strong man armed, again, said like a fact, a given, not a question, his goods are in peace. He is safe. There is peace. All is well. Now, to me, the common sense understanding, of course, understanding that if sense were common, a lot more people would have it, is that it is presumed, not assumed, because you know what they say about that, but presumed, even permissible to believe as a given, a fact, that he is armed and he is strong and armed equals peace. Let's just resonate on that for a minute. Now, to take this further, you may be armed and ready to protect what you hold dear. Prayerfully, you will never have need to use that which you armed yourself with. But if you do, Exodus 22:2-3 tells us, if the thief is found breaking in, and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Now, if the sun rises on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He should make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. Now, for those of you who have the opportunity to interact with those unenlightened folks who don't share our views, and they want to argue that God does not allow this, and will quote to you from the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, this is how you get them. Y'all listening? First thing, this scripture, like many others, is not, capital N, capital O, capital T, not literal. God doesn't care what time of day or night someone tries to rob or assault you. This scripture is a distinction between self-defense and revenge or vengeance. Self-defense is allowed. Now, in Romans 12:19, scripture reads, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, said the Lord. Now, the assumption, first of all, is that the thief probably broke in at night. So if he's caught while breaking in, and the owner of the perhaps defends himself, killing the thief, he is not guilty of murder. If, however, the thief escapes and is found later, presumably after the son is risen again, and is killed, then it's murder. In other words, biblical law is saying that lethal self-defense is allowed. But we're not to hunt down thieves and kill them because, well, larceny is not a capital crime. It may really piss you off, but it's not a capital crime. The son having risen indicates the thief being found at some later time, rather than while he was breaking in the first part of the scenario. The Constitution and the Bible are in agreement with our right to protect ourselves, our family, and our property. For many of us, our family is the motivating and empowering force behind us. It's the reason we strive to do and be better. But lack thereof is also part of the cause of many of the issues in our communities, many of which lead to high crime and violence rate in our communities. The issues break down into two categories here for the purpose tonight. Those that the government can fix and those that they cannot. Now we know there's a lot they put in that one category they don't need to be touching, so we're going to leave that alone for tonight. Those that the government can fix, in my humble opinion, and yes, I do mean humble, are economic opportunities, educational opportunities, and unemployment. Now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with the Second Amendment? Now follow me. Nothing happens in a vacuum. We live in a world of cause and effect. The higher unemployment, the higher taxes, the lower the amount of educational opportunities, the higher the desperation level, and the higher the crime rate. Now have you noticed, I believe one of my esteemed colleagues here mentioned that she's from Illinois. And have you noticed, as I believe she said, that some of the areas with the tightest gun control have the highest crime? So clearly the logic that folks are trying to employ here doesn't work. If we don't change the causes leading to increased crime, the Second Amendment will continue to be under attack by those who refuse to look below the surface and fix the root problems. In the book Genesis, who's laughing? I heard you. Don't steal my joke. God gave me this. I mean, he was this one. And the book, amen. In the book of Genesis, when Cain killed Abel with a rock, God didn't banish the dang blasted rocks. He banished Abel. We need to stop allowing our legislators to punish guns.
That's
The
right.
guns didn't do it by themselves. I want to take a moment to thank Frank Fiamingo and this wonderful organization. My hope is that this will be a catalyst for real change. Not that kind that other guy talked about a couple of years ago, and I keep asking how that worked out, because it ain't working out too doggone good for me. But some real sustainable change that makes sense. You know, we have in this state 22 or 23 laws in front of our esteemed state legislators on gun control. You know, you gotta say it sometime. I'm trying to give a dog a bone or something. But they might make a good suit. Nobody said you can't bomb, they said you can't shoot him. Okay. Although I do believe somebody got in trouble for planning to cook and eat people, so you might want to hold that off for a minute. You know, I met my fellow last civil rights ladies through Facebook. And it's funny because 5 years ago I had no clue what a Facebook was. And my kids said, you know, it's that thing we do. You know what, we should try it. I was like, yeah, right, no, it's all right. You'll keep that. Anyway, I first met Colleen. I liked her writing and what she stood for. I was working on my first book at the time and asked if I could interview her for it. And she in turn asked me if she could interview me for her blog. contributed co-author for the book, and I became a co-writer for The Last Civil Right along with Kaleem and Babette. And they just so crazy. But you know, y'all remember, I mean, look at the two of them. How can I not be crazy being around them all the time? I mean, come on. But you only live once. And when you believe in something, you want to fight for it, you got to make every minute count. Our goal with The Last Civil Right is to fight for traditional, conservative values that we hold near and dear. Now, we may not look like the most conservative folk, but you know what they say, looks can be deceiving. They can be. Because my children will tell you, I kind of hold some of them values real tight. But I digress. Let me ask a question. How many of you here tonight are elected officials? Okay, well, the people that were proud enough to raise their hand, clap for them, because there aren't too many of them. How many of you here are running for office? Awesome. Clap for them too. Now for the next question, I kind of think I stacked this one because I know the answer a little bit. But how many of you are working on one campaign or activists working this election cycle multiple campaigns? All right. Now, I said in the beginning I'm not politically correct, so y'all don't be mad. But now I'm asked, of all y'all that raised your hands, how many of y'all have read my book? And the crickets chirp. You a co-author, you don't count. Now, going back to that not politically correct thing, I'm not going to say create drama, because that would just be untrue. But the name of the book is White Folks' Guide to Understanding the Black Community and Get Out the Vote.
It was her idea.
It really was, I know why. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. This year in New Jersey, everyone from the governor on down is up for election. It is too important an election year to sit around and be politically correct. Y'all do that if you want to, but how's that been working out? Okay. Now, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. For those of you that have not read the book, which pretty much everyone in the room, see either myself or my son, because I like to throw him under the bus, and make sure we have your name and your email, and I will send you the section of the book on getting out the minority vote. It's not rocket science. It's just some folks think we work a little different, we think a little different. Whatever the case may be, you want to get the vote? I'm going to send you out. It's time to change the paradigm of thought. Every day you see some news piece about how the Republican Party is changing its program on minority outreach. You know why?
Because it's stupid.
We can hang out. I like that answer. My answer was because the party missed the boat. And how many of you all here have heard the Einstein theory of insanity? Time to change that paradigm of thought. Now, here's the other thing. Y'all have heard the phrase that some of us have said about preaching to the choir. Okay, here's the thing about that. It's time to get outside of the box. It's time to stop preaching to the choir. It's time to spin the message. See, the message isn't that we need to defend ourselves against criminal minorities. The message is to minorities. How many more children have to die in senseless violence? How many more elderly need to suffer through home invasions? How many more women need to be raped and murdered? See, that is the question. The answer is no more, never again, and enough is enough. You have the right to defend yourself. You have the right not to feel like your neighborhood is a war zone. You have the right to be able to protect yourself and your family. See, the Constitution says we have the right to bear arms. The Bible says we have the right to defend ourselves. The problem comes when our lawmakers look to establish and impinge on our biblical and constitutional rights to defend ourselves. See, the laws many are looking to pass in both the state and federal levels just don't touch on the core of the problem. It's not law-abiding citizens that are committing the crimes in the streets and in our schools and in our communities. It's the criminally minded that are perpetrating these heinous acts that we see and read about. And the last time I checked, they could care less about what laws you pass.
That's right.
They're not buying guns legally. They're not using them for self-defense. They're using them to perpetrate crimes. See, they are the reason, going back to the beginning of time, God included provisions for self-defense in the Bible. They're the reason why our Jesus. Thank you, God. They are the reason why our forefathers instituted provisions of defense in the Constitution. So to the lawmakers, anyone you know that happen to hang out with, talk to, know a few, whatever the case may be, I say to you, and tell them I said this. God says I can defend myself. So who the hell are you to tell me I can't?
Okay, wow. I'm blown away, okay, because, I had an idea of what we wanted to do here tonight, and I think not only have we accomplished it, we still have a little bit more to go, but I think we've really gone right over the top with these wonderful women. I'm going to introduce somebody that is one of our own, Alexander Rubian, who has taken over to help me do this urban outreach. I've asked him to be my Director of Community Affairs and Urban Outreach, Alexander Rubian. I'd like him to just provide
We're not going to fit in the stage together. I have absolutely nothing to contribute after hearing these phenomenal speakers. All my jokes and my material was taken away, so I guess I'll just begin by saying I'm not black, if you didn't notice. So what makes me the Director of Community Affairs and Urban Outreach?
Wait, he's Puerto Rican.
My mother's Spanish and my father's Armenian. So my mother lives in Puerto Rico, so he titled me as a Puerto Rican. Whatever that means. But that actually brings up to my heritage, which I always like to talk about, because when people bring up these issues that we will never have a tyrannical government in the United States, I like to explain to them how my great-grandfather and my grandfather were survivors of the Armenian genocide, where at the time the Ottoman Turks decided to murder all the Armenians and got about 1.5 million that nobody studies today, nobody reads about in school. So when we talk to our constituents and we talk to our neighbors and friends and families, it's good to recite history, because when people think that their own government cannot become tyrannical and overpower them, it's time to wake up. And doing a lot of work in Newark, New Jersey, where I lived for several years, and that's how I actually became involved in the firearms community, because on May 25th of 2011, I was walking home late from work one evening where I heard a man scream, and allowed what I found out was a gunshot after, because I really thought it was a firecracker. And I came to find out a few minutes later that a man was killed by 3 criminals. So I lived in the suburbs where I never had to worry about my safety, I never had to worry about the police not showing up. But to see the reaction time, to kind of see the outcome, it really disturbed me to find 2 17-year-olds and 1 18-year-old were the criminals that took this innocent man's life, who for weeks I had to walk by his mural that his family put up, pleading for assistance for his wife and his children because he was their sole provider. So when we talk about gun violence, I take it very personal because it was a life-changing experience for me. It was more disturbing to find out the reaction from my legislators when I spoke to them about this occurrence, because their solution was creating more gun laws. And to find out that we already have the strictest gun laws in the United States, I knew that wasn't the solution. And going into the neighborhoods, talking to the individuals, you find out they're undereducated, they come from broken families, their school system failed them, and those are the issues that we have to really address, because you can ban all the guns you want, but when do criminals ever abide by the laws? There's always going to be a black market. So I guess what I will talk about is how you can make a change, because we've had some phenomenal speakers today discussing every issue. About a year ago to the day, on March 30th, I met with the Newark Police Department because I was helping aid people go through the bureaucracy of applying for their firearms application card. And I contacted Frank. I said, I'm meeting with the police director's secretary to help and kind of clean up the process, since they were violating all the state statutes and making it extremely bureaucratic, things that even I couldn't have satisfied if I were to be applying. And Frank was not very...
At first, I said, Newark, are you kidding me?
So I decided to schedule the meeting anyway. And it took almost a year, but I got a phone call last week, and I had a meeting with their legal affairs department, which said that they're going to be removing all the illegal forms and following state statutes. So a lot of people never think that writing letters does make a difference, and that's how it really begins. People are asking me, why did you do that? Well, I wrote a couple letters, and then I made a couple phone calls. And then when the mayor and the police director were on the radio about 2 months ago, I decided to call them up and tell Mayor Cory Booker, how dare you support more legislation and more proposed gun laws when your own city does not abide by the current gun laws in New Jersey? And I'm not going to go into the response because it was, as you probably already heard, it's no big deal. But it also disturbs me working in these neighborhoods, how badly conditioned the African American community is into thinking that by just buying or obtaining a legal firearm, they're automatically criminals. And one of the things that I love to do is take my friends to the range, and when I speak to my white friends about it, it's never an issue. When I talk to my black friends about it, they're like, are you kidding me? I'm black. I don't want the cops coming in and arresting me. And they say it jokingly, but there is some underlying social conditioning to make them think that they cannot have the right to defend themselves. And that's something that has to really change. We have to do the outreach and speaking to your friends, speaking to your family, because what we see today is that the media and the politicians are owning the conversation because they're controlling the dialogue. There was an article that I read this morning that was talking about all the firearms that were taken off the streets because of the the gun buyback programs. And when you read the context of the conversation, they're saying these are guns that are now taken off the streets, that cannot be used in murders, that cannot be used in rapes, that cannot be used in assaults. And they mention all these horrible things, except for one of the most vital things that is protected, which is the right to self-defense. So when they own the conversation by controlling the dialogue, that's where we lose. And the only way we're going to win that is by going out, reaching out to your friends, reaching out to your family, and talking about these issues with them. I'm guilty of it myself. I was a closet gun owner, as we like to joke around in New Jersey, for probably the first year or two. And as I started talking to more people about it, you'd be very surprised how many people come out and tell you, well, I'm actually a gun owner, but I don't like to tell people a lot of that because I don't want them thinking I'm loony. So that's that stigma. We have to change that. You have to be vocal about these issues. You have to be vocal about your right to self-defense. Not the constitutional right, your natural right. Your God-given right that you have the ability to defend yourself. If we were passing legislation to ban fistfights by having people handcuffed all day, it would be a big issue. But unfortunately, criminals today have firearms, and we have to defend ourselves with firearms. And that's not the only reason why the Founding Fathers put that in the Constitution. line of defense for all of our other rights. If you don't have the right to defend your freedom of speech by using a firearm, they're going to take it away, and they're going to limit it. So with that, I ask everybody, just reach out to your community, speak about these issues, because as we break and thaw this negative stigma about firearms, we're going to get more people on our side. And we're willing to work with everybody about this. Now, we're not asking that you just go out and say, I think it's my gun and it's my right to have it. You have to explain these issues. You have to be very compassionate, because unfortunately, these people have been indoctrinated their entire lives. Or, can I make a joke about your cousin? They've been brainwashed, as our Attorney General, Eric Holder, tells people. And this has been something that's been happening for many years. And I have to say that this has been happening since the late 60s, especially in New Jersey, where we passed the most restrictive gun laws in the country. And it's by no surprise that we have the most amount of violence in, with New York, New Jersey, and Chicago. So we have to start taking control of the conversation, start taking control of the dialogue. We're willing to work with everybody on this. Just reaching out to your friends and family. If each of you took one person to the range with you, it would be a massive success. I had a friend of mine from Canada who used to always just destroy me on Facebook and just make it very difficult for me to put any issues about firearms. She calls me one day and goes, hey, I'm in New York City, you want to get together for lunch? I was like, I got a better idea, why don't you come with me to the range? And now she's a very large supporter of the Second Amendment and loves to go shooting, and she happened to be an amazing shot. So that was another reason why she got very interested. But by having her involved in the activity and realizing I'm no more dangerous now because I have a firearm except for defending myself against a criminal, that is how we're going to succeed at this fight, and that's how we're going to win over the communities and start changing New Jersey as well as the mentality and this horrible stigma that's going on around the rest of the United States. So feel free to reach out to us. We're always willing to work with any groups to talk about these issues and just be able to change the way New Jersey's operating today. My mother's family had to flee Cuba in '59, and my father's family had to flee in World War I during the genocide. And people were always saying, why are you staying here? I was like, my family's been running their entire lives from tyrannical government. I'm not going to leave New Jersey. I'm not going to sacrifice the memories that I had with my family and not be able to provide the same to my children because some radical, off-the-chain politician wants to create laws that are going to limit my natural rights. And thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. I'm going to break script for just a moment because I found myself thinking something while we were up here. We're sitting up here on the stage just because of the video and because, we need to sit together and as a panel. And you guys are sitting down there, and I don't want you to think for 1 second that there's anything different about us than there is about you. Every single one of you can do what you do to make this a better state, a better country, and to increase the safety of your families, to get the word out. We're just ordinary people that have taken, this part, this responsibility upon ourselves. Every single one of us can do it. This is we the people. I mean, what you're seeing up here is we the people. So I just wanted to break script there for a minute. Also, I want to mention that on your way out, we have brochures for anyone that's not already a member. I think most of the people here are members of that NJ2AS, but if you're not, we have our brochures. But this is a very important brochure that I want you to pick up on the way out. This is about, if you don't already know about being a committee person and the power of the position, I want you to take this brochure and I want you to read it and then find out more, because the way that we're actually going to take back this state and this country is through this procedure, okay? And you'll see what I'm talking about when you read it, okay? And there's a lot of people here that already have started the process and, either are committee people or are running for committee. Okay, I'm just going to finish up now, and then after we finish up, I'm going to ask you to just go ahead. We have some snacks. We can get pitchers of soda over at the bar and bring to the tables if you want. And come up here, we'll come down there, or whatever, and we'll talk with you. Okay. So I sincerely hope that you've gained something of value from this diverse group of fellow patriots. Right? We all have a vested interest in preserving the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. These rights are only guaranteed as long as we, the people, are willing to fight for them. This is a fight for the hearts and minds of American people who may have forgotten that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So what does this mean for the future of this movement? It means that we cannot allow those who do not value freedom to continue to divide us and keep us apart. If we honestly wish to reduce violence in our cities and towns, we must work together to eliminate the underlying causes of the violence. Okay? We all understand how prolonged poverty and desperation can lead to tragedies like drugs, crime, and gang violence. The long-term answers to these problems don't lie in government giveaways. The only kind of sustained economic development brought about by private enterprise can lift a community out of the crushing grip of poverty. Limiting government interference in the affairs of businesses will allow free enterprise to flourish and provide desperately needed opportunities. This won't happen overnight, but it won't happen at all if we don't work to make it happen. Whether it is faith in God or faith in the basic value of humanity, we must succeed for the benefit of our families to maintain both our economic freedom and our civil liberties. Thank you very much, everyone.